Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, let us see and learn about one more important concept. That is, by using real-time example, let's understood this concept. Now, let's say I am present in my on-premise and I have servers. Now, from those servers, what I am expecting? I am expecting to connect to a S3 bucket. So, from my on-premise servers, now I'm expecting to connect to my S3 bucket securely in a private network. Is that possible by using AWS Cloud? Yes. If you want to access your S3 bucket securely by using a private network, that is not through internet. Not through internet, that means nothing but it's a private network. If you want to connect to your S3 bucket by using a private network, then you have an option that is a S3 gateway interface. By using that S3 gateway interface, you can able to connect to your S3 bucket. By connecting into your VPC, you can able to connect to your S3 bucket. Now in this video, we will learn how to create this S3 gateway interface endpoint in order to access my S3 bucket, and we also see how to create a private domain in order to access this. By using this Route 53 service, we can even create create our own record in order to route the traffic from by using a certain domain name to this S3 bucket. In order to access this, I will even show you how to create your own record to your domain. In order to do this, so first we need to allow the traffic that is coming from my on-premise to this VPC, right? Yeah. So how do you gonna allow? Or else by using any one of the port, you will send the traffic, right? Yeah. So that you gonna define in your on-premise route table, first task. Then after, to receive the S3 related data from our on-premise, what do? We create a S3 gateway interface endpoint to our VPC cloud. To our VPC cloud, we will create a S3 gateway endpoint in order to access this S3 data in our on-premises. Then we will verify that by accessing into this on-premise server, we will try to verify that that server can able to access that S3 data or not. Then in order to make use of good user endpoint, obviously this endpoint, that is S3 gateway interface endpoint that created was nasty thing. That is it seems not to be good. To use good endpoint in real time, what we do? We obviously create a domain, right? Yeah. So in this lab, I'll also show you how to create a alias record where that will forward your client request to your VPC gateway interface. Now, to use this domain name as our endpoint in our on-premise VPC, we must need to create a rule in our Route 53 in order to route the traffic from our on-premise to this particular S3 through this gateway interface. By using that domain name, we need to create a route in this. We need to create a rule in this Route 53. So by using that rule, that request will be routed to this S3. So now in this lab, we'll see all these things. So first I log in into my AWS management console. For this lab, I've already created two VPCs one VPC in order to represent our on-premise data center, and another VPC is to represent our VPC cloud. So first I want to show you those two things. Now you can see I will log in into my AWS management console. Now I want to show you the two VPCs that I have created for you. I'm opening the VPCs. One VPC I created to represent my on-premise data center, and one VPC I created to represent my VPC cloud. So those two are, you can see these two are those. So one is a VPC on-prem, one is VPC cloud. Now, what is the first thing that I want to do? The first thing that I want to do is I want to allow what I want to move the traffic from my on-premise to this VPC, to this VPC cloud. So in order to move that, what I need now, in order to send the traffic from my on-premise to S3 bucket through any AWS cloud VPC, what I need? First, I need to create a path, right? Yeah. So to create a path, I'm opening my on-premise related subnets route table. You can see I'm opening this route table in another new tab. Now I want to allow the traffic, or I want to send the traffic from my on-premise to AWS cloud. So in order to do that, first we need to know from which destination, or else through which target I want to send. Through any EC2 instance I want to send that. So that's why, so first I want to open this on-premises private server. If you want to send the traffic through public server, that is a public subnet, then obviously it has a internet access, so you can able to send the traffic. But now in this lab, we are focusing on security. So that's why I want to show you how to connect to your S3 by using private servers. You can see this is the private servers related route table. If you see the routes, there is a no route where that will move the traffic from this on-premise server to this VPC cloud, right? Yeah, to this VPC cloud. In order to move my traffic from on-premise server to VPC cloud, there is a no route actually present in this route table. So this is actually my private on-premise route table. So in order to move my traffic from my private servers to this VPC cloud, from my on-premise private servers to this VPC cloud, in order to move my traffic, first what I need to do? I need to create a route right here. Yeah. So let's do that. I'm clicking on edit. Now I want to add a route. So what is our destination? Our destination is nothing but this VPC cloud. So what is the CIDR block that we need to copy, and I'm pasting that here. So by using this CIDR block, I'm specifying this is the VPC cloud CIDR block address. To here I want to move. By using what I want to move? By using a instance, by using a EC2 instance I want to move. I've already created two EC2 instances in my on-premise and one EC2 instance in this cloud. So just forgot the instance that I created for this cloud. I currently created two EC2 instances for this on-premise. I'll also show you those two. So one EC2 instance I create for the purpose in order to send the traffic. In order to send the traffic through that EC2 instance, I've created one EC2 instance. And so we need also a server, right, in order to send the traffic. Yeah. So for that server, I've created one EC2 instance. You can see this infra VPN gateway test. So this actually I created in order to send the traffic through this. Through this instance, I want to send the traffic. So that's why I created this EC2 instance. Now, if you observe this particular IP address, where it is present, inside my on-premise. So that's why it is starting with 172.16. If you open your on-premise VPC, their CIDR block starts with 172.16. So let's open the instance, and I want to show you one more, that is this test interface endpoint. This also starts with 172.16. That means this server also present in this on-premise only. Okay, in order to test the connectivity, I created this, and in order to provide the traffic from my on-premise to this AWS cloud, I need a path, right? Yeah. So for that, I created this infra VPN gateway test. And now I'm copying this ID, or you can simply remember the name. That option is visible here. So in the route table, in this route table, this is nothing but my on-premise private route table, right? Here I'm adding the route through what I want to move my traffic to VPC cloud through this infra VPN gateway test server. So that's why I provided that instance related ID here. Then to where I want to move to this destination. This is nothing but the CIDR block address of my VPC cloud. So like this, through this instance, I'm moving my traffic to here, to this destination. I'm saving these changes so that this route will be added. You can see this route will be added to my private route table. What is that? This is the private route table of my on-premise. Here I have added a path in order to connect to my destination. What is that? That's a VPC cloud. So now we successfully created a route in order to send the traffic from our on-premise to our VPC cloud. Through what? Through a particular EC2 instance. Okay. So now our traffic will move from on-premise to this VPC through that EC2 instance route. Now, what I want to do? Actually, I want to connect it to this S3, right? Yeah. So in order to connect it to this S3, what we need to do, sir? We need to create a private S3 gateway interface endpoint. Through that endpoint, you can able to connect it to your S3 bucket. Okay. Now the question is, from where we can able to create that? From VPC. You can see I opened this VPC. Under this, you have an option called endpoints. I'm opening this in another new tab. By using this endpoints option, you can able to create your endpoint to your S3. So not only S3, you can even create an endpoint to sessions manager in order to connect to your EC2 instances. So let's for our need, let's create an S3 endpoint to connect to any S3 bucket. It's a generalized endpoint to connect to any S3 bucket by using that private URL endpoint. Now I'm clicking on create endpoint. Currently I have many endpoints. Now I'm creating one more. Here now I'm just moving it up, and this name is optional, so that's why I'm leaving it. And service category. You can select the service category for what you are creating the endpoint. Currently, I'm creating endpoint for S3. That is nothing but one of the AWS services. So that's why I selected this. Now you need to provide the service name in order to get that particular related endpoints. You can see these are the available endpoints. We have for S3, we have interface endpoint, and you can see for this S3, you also have the gateway endpoint. In which region you have login. For that region, for that particular region related endpoints will be visible to you. So whenever you apply filter. Currently, you can use this gateway endpoint when you want to connect from same AWS cloud. Or you can say, if you want to connect from any AWS cloud resource, then you can choose this gateway endpoint. Let's say if you want to connect from outside of AWS cloud, that is from your on-premise, then you can choose this interface. Now I'm creating this interface type. So that's why I selected this. And now you need to select the VPC. You need to select the VPC in which you want to create the endpoint. If you move back to your architecture, so where you are expecting to create your endpoint inside your cloud VPC, right? Yeah. So if you open the VPC related settings, what is your cloud VPC? That is VPC cloud. So what is the IP CIDR block? 10.0.0.0/16. Now for this, I want to create S3 gateway endpoint interface. So yeah, let's provide that. Yeah, I'm choosing this VPC cloud. So here we need to provide where we want to create this endpoint. In this VPC cloud, we want to create this endpoint. So that's why I selected this. And in which availability subnets or else in which availability zones you want to put this endpoint. I have selected the availability zones and provided the present availability zones. Related subnet details. Then I'm using IPv4 type. Then now I need to select the security group. So for this, I've already created that is a security group for this S3 endpoint that I'm selecting. You can even analyze that by opening the group ID. There in that I've allowed the traffic which I want to allow. You can see the inbound traffic. Here I allowed all traffic, whereas outbound, if you see here also I allowed all. Now, yeah, currently I'm providing full access and creating this endpoint. So in this way, we can able to create a S3 gateway interface. You can see this is the VPC gateway interface for S3 buckets. For S3 we just created. This is currently in pending state. You can see this is the service. What is that? S3 related service. For that we created just now the interface endpoint. So currently it is in pending. Let's wait till it gets available. So currently it is pending. Let's wait for a moment. Now you can see this endpoint is created. So this is the endpoint that we created. That endpoint is now available. This S3 interface type endpoint just now created and it is available now. Through this endpoint, we can able to interact. We can able to interact with S3 through VPC by using a private network. So for this, first we need to copy the endpoint related DNS names. I just copied this. Now, in order to interact with S3, we need a server, right? Yeah. So for that, for testing whether we can able to interact with S3 or not, I'm using the server. This is the server that I have created within my on-premise cloud. Since it created within my on-premise cloud, so that's why it is starting with 172.16. Now I'm connecting to this server through sessions manager. And now I'll check whether that DNS name that I copied, or you can say the DNS name that is created from the endpoint, interface endpoint, S3 interface endpoint that is just now created is working or not. So for this, I'm writing the command that is AWS S3. I want to list the buckets which are present in that. So by using what? Endpoint URL. Yeah. I'm just pasting that. Before pasting that, I'm writing https://bucket dot. Yeah, now I'm pasting that. So here I'm removing this dot and star. Yeah, I'm just clicking on enter. Now you can observe whatever the buckets which are present in my S3, those are visible here, right? Yeah. So By using this endpoint URL, I can able to access my AWS S3 bucket related content, S3 related content. We can even modify the policy which is present under this endpoint. If you observe clearly, then you have policy option. There you can able to edit this. So based on the policy that you provide, till that much extent of access to S3 only given to users who are using this endpoint related DNS in order to connect to your S3. Like that, by using this policy, you can able to restrict even the access to specific content only. And you can even access your S3 content using private URL, that is a private network URL, interface URL. You are now accessing your content. Now, let's say I want to, if you observe how this URL will look like, this look like a very lengthy and needs, it does not need to, it is not a neat URL, right? Yeah. So for now, for this lab, in real time also, what we do, we create a fancy URL in order to access my endpoint. In order to access my S3, we'll obviously create a fancy URL, right? Yeah. So now in this lab, we're gonna do that as well. So how do we gonna do that? We have already done accessing our S3 bucket through the VPC gateway interface. We created this VPC gateway interface endpoint URL. Through that, we connected to this S3 bucket from our one of the on-premises server. Now I want to make the VPC gateway endpoint URL to be a good looking URL other than like this. You can see the endpoint URL. So the DNS URL looks like this, right? I want to make this to be a good. So for that, we have this Route 53. There you can able to manage domain names. You can able to manage domain name servers inside your Route 53 service. Now I'm opening Route 53. You can see I'm opening this Route 53 in one more new tab. There I've already created one private hosted zone for you. If you don't know how to create your private hosted zone, so for that I've already made some video. Please watch it. Now you can see under hosted zones, I'll show you the private hosted zone that I've created. So this is the private hosted zone that I've created. So if you use this, if you use this as your domain name, then you can able to connect it to your S3. So like that, I want to create the rule. So for that, first we need to create a record in this. In this hosted zone, first we need to create a record in order to route the traffic which is coming to this. We'll move to the particular DNS. What is the endpoint DNS? This is the endpoint. You can say interface endpoint you created for S3, right? Yeah. So to there, we need to forward the traffic by using this Route 53 related record. Now I'm creating a record. You can say I'm clicking on create record. Then in this, I'm creating a type record. So whenever I'm getting the request to this domain, that need to move to my DNS, right? Yeah. So that I'm providing here. I am routing the traffic to where? To my network, right? This VPC endpoint. I'm aliasing to VPC endpoint. Where that is present? Inside US East, that is North Virginia that I have selected because my endpoint is present in that region. So that's why I selected that region. Now I'm choosing the endpoint, or you can say I copied the endpoint URL. I'm pasting that here. Now I'm clicking on enter. So this is the DNS name of the endpoint interface. So whenever I'm getting the traffic to this, that will be routed to this. So for that, I have created a alias record. Now I'm clicking on create record. You can see a alias record got created successfully. Now let's have a question. So for what VPC actually you are using this, sir? We are using this only for our on-premise VPC, right? Yeah. So that also we need to define inside our rules. You can see here we have an option that is rules. We need to define here inside these rules, specifying that. So whenever you are getting a traffic from some particular VPC, that is our on-premise VPC in this case, with this domain name, I need to forward the request to this, or you can say my endpoint. So that we need to specify. So in order to specify that, here we have an option regarding inbound endpoints. In this inbound endpoints, you have the IP addresses. You have the IP addresses related to that. Now I'm opening this inbound endpoints. Now I'm copying this. So I'm copying these two. So whenever if we send the traffic to this, then that traffic will be sent to our server. That is our Route 53 hosted zone related record. Then it will pick the record, and to that record the request will be sent. So what is our records that we provided? That is nothing but this endpoint. Whenever that it's this endpoint, then it is obviously the interface path. So that's why we can able to communicate with S3. Now, yeah, we need to copy these two. I'm just moving it in one more tab to create a rule. Now you can see I'm creating a rule. The rule name I'm providing like rule 1. You can provide the rule name in order to identify that rule based on your requirement. Then this rule type is a forwarding type rule. Since it needs to forward the request, right? So that's why I selected the forward. Then domain name we need to provide. So what is our domain name? Our domain name is nothing but S3 something is there, right? Yeah. So I'm opening that hosted zone, where in that hosted zone, I have that domain name. So this is the domain name that I previously created. I'm just copying it and pasting that here. So whenever user requests with this domain name, then their request need to route to where? To this output endpoint. Here I'm providing the output related IPv4 addresses. So those are these. I'm just copying this and providing there. And I'm adding the target, and I'm adding one more IP address. Yeah. So from which VPC? So we also need to specify that which VPC we're gonna use this. From which VPC we're gonna use this rule. I want to use the on-premise VPC, right? So that's why I selected that. Since we are requesting from this VPC, so that's why I selected this. So whenever we request from this VPC by using this domain name, it will forward that traffic to where? To these two endpoints. These two endpoints will invoke this. These two endpoints will invoke to here, and that will route the traffic to this alias record to this endpoint. So what is this endpoint? This endpoint is nothing but our VPC related interface endpoint for our S3. So that's what happened in the backend. Now I'm just going to submit this. So whenever I submit, we can see that rule got created successfully here, right? Yeah. Now I'm just reloading this. Yeah, that rule got successfully created here. Now I'm just moving back to my this. What is this? This is the server that we connected to. From where? From this EC2 instance, I connected to there. The server where it is present inside my on-premise, so that's why it is starting with 172.16. Now we connected to one of our on-premise server. Now I want to request the same thing by using this HTTP request. I'm copying that domain name. You can see this is the domain name, right? Yeah. I'm just copying this. Now I simply paste that there and check whether my request got routed to there or not. Yeah. I'm just clicking on enter. Now you can see we are getting the response. That means, so for this nasty URL, or you can say for this unlooking a good URL, we provide a good looking URL, right? Yeah. By creating a record, by creating a type record inside which service? Inside our Route 53 service. Since it's a private type hosting, we have even defined that a rule here. In this rule, we defined from where our request is coming, and so whenever the request is related to particular, then to where our request need to be sent. That VPC we defined, and to which targets we need to send, that also we defined. So everything we got defined. Now let's say in sometimes what happens is you may get requests with before this domain name you have something, so after this domain name will be there, so like that you may get the request in real time. So during that case also, in order to route the traffic to this, we also need to create a route. So here also I'm specifying that. So in order to specify all the traffic which is coming before this, you can use the while character, that is a star. So whenever you put a star, then obviously a dot is generated here. So if you don't put it, then that is not there. If you put it, then dot is there. So whatever the thing it may be, this while character indicates anything. If any request that coming with that starting with anything but ending with this, then it will route the traffic to where. So that we need to define here. I'm aliasing the traffic to my website, right? Yeah. So I'm providing the VPC. It's an interface, right? Yeah. Interface endpoint. So I'm specifying VPC endpoint. Then region we need to specify where our endpoint is, same like previously. I specified this is the region where my endpoint is. And we need to provide our endpoint related DNS. So that is this. I'm just copying it again. Here I'm pasting that. Yeah. So that's it. I'm just creating it. So from now, so whatever the requests that are coming, that will start with anything, but that if any request that is ending with this, then that request also routed to the same DNS, or you can say the same S3 gateway, S3 interface gateway, or you can say S3 interface endpoint. So by using that, you can able to connect to your S3 bucket. So in this way, we can able to connect to our S3 bucket securely by using what? VPC S3 interface endpoint URL. And from where? From our on-premise servers. We can even convert this ungood looking interface URL or interface endpoint to good domain name by using which service? Route 53 service. So this is all about this lab. In this lab, we securely accessed our S3 bucket from where? From our on-premise. By using what? By using VPC S3 interface endpoint URL. And we even convert that, or we even created a domain name for that. In order to access with a good domain name, in order to access our S3 bucket with a good domain name, we also created a record in our S3, that is a route 53 as well. In our route 53, we see in a hosted zone, private hosted zone, there we created a record. So this is all about this video on hands-on securely accessing your S3 bucket from your on-premise using VPC S3 interface endpoint. I hope this video is understanding to you and you got a good knowledge about this concept. How you can able to securely by using private network connect to your S3 bucket. I hope you understood this hands-on implementation of how to connect securely by using private network from your on-premise servers to S3 bucket. I hope this video is useful to you. Thanks for watching again. See you back in the next video with another interesting topic. Until then, bye bye guys. If you like the video, then please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching again.